So we are now being recorded, so. And so far, I got 4 attendees out there, 6 of us. So.
I've just realized I've come through on Marcus's conference code, hence they're saying there's 2 Marcus Edwards on the call.
Yeah, it's what's shown on my screen.
You're gonna give them a few minutes to join, Tom? Maybe about 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, I'm still looking at the attendees, so let's just hold fast for a minute or two here. And, numbers are starting to build. Okay. I'm going to get it started because in the interest of being on time, and it will be recorded. So if people missed the front part, they can catch up on the recording. Anyway, welcome to our presentation on cyber threat awareness, sponsored by the Bermuda Bankers Association in conjunction with the BEDC. And we thank them for their assistance in bringing this to you. We have 4 of our member banks here today, representatives from their cybersecurity subcommittee to provide this training. And they will walk you through their portions of the slides. I'll leave them to introduce themselves. And we'll start off with Rick Mello from Clarion. Rick.
Rick, you're on mute.
Rick, unmute yourself, please.
Apologies for that. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ricardo Mello, Cyber Risk Operations Manager at Clarion Bank. And this afternoon, I'll be talking a bit about social engineering, phishing, and ransomware. So what is social engineering? The use of deception to manipulate individuals into divulging confidential or personal information that may be used for fraudulent purposes. Next slide, please. So types of social engineering. Phishing, which consists of mass scale phishing, spear phishing, and whaling. We'll get more into detail of that in some upcoming slides. Phone scams, so such as fake tech support calls. Phishing, which are voicemail scams. Smishing, SMS scams, and social media scams, say via WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, Twitter, etc. Next slide. So let me just talk a bit about phone scams. Sorry, previous slide, Tom. So phone scams, you might get a fake support phone call, somebody claiming to be from Microsoft. And then they may ask you to install an application such as TeamViewer so they can get remote access to your computer to fix a problem, so they say. And then they'll install some malicious software or something of that nature on your machine. Phishing, they can sort of leave an urgent message, maybe saying you want a prize, and when you call them back, they may ask for some personal details or maybe like a small payment, small upfront payment to release the funds. I think there has been sophisticated instances recently too, using artificial intelligence to sort of mimic somebody else's voice, somebody that you know, to leave a message as well. SMS, there may be a SMS message you receive containing a malicious link, maybe to change your bank login details, your login password, or something along those lines. Social media, one example I can think of is they would compromise one of your friends' accounts, and then you start receiving, maybe say in Facebook, for example, you might receive a messenger message from one of your friends saying maybe they're stranded in another country, and they need you to send them some funds. That actually happened to me not too long ago, but of course I spotted that instantly, especially since I didn't talk to the person that much. Next slide. So social engineering best practices. Use your security spider sense. Always validate requests for information, even if you're not 100,000% sure. So you want to do things like, if you're not sure about an email or a text you receive, and it's claiming to be from somebody you know, just try giving them a call to confirm that they've sent it. If they're sending a message sort of related to a company or something like that, you can always Google it to find some more information. So you always want to ask questions. Yeah, so you want to find out, is this who I think it is for sure? And then say in work cases, did somebody mention this to you personally, or was it discussed at a staff meeting? Maybe you might get a fake IT email saying that they're doing upgrades or something like that. Usually if you had a staff meeting, that might be something that's discussed first. And is this the first time you're hearing about it? So, you know, important things that are happening, you should know about them beforehand. Next slide. So we get into phishing now. So what is phishing? Phishing is a fraudulent practice of sending emails purporting to be from reputable companies in order to induce individuals to reveal personal information such as passwords or credit card numbers. Next slide.
Rick, am I on the right? Slide here? Okay.
You got it, yeah.
I think you're sharing the wrong screen there. Sorry, Tom. It should be.
I'm showing types of phishing.
Yeah, I'm moving on to that one now. So yeah, thank you.
Okay. Paul, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So types of phishing are mass scale phishing. So mass scale phishing, they may use email lists that they've gathered from the internet, from data leak sites, and just send out mass emails to a whole bunch of people to try and get them to click on links to do that. Spear phishing would take it a next step. They do the same recon. They would do some recon about the victim, maybe on social media and other sites, to find out a little bit more about them. And then they tailor the email message to try and gain their trust. So they may compromise somebody else's email first, say a friend's email. So it would appear to, well, it would come directly from that person's email, so you may trust it. Or they could spoof an email, which is just making it look like it comes from the person. And then they do things like maybe put a link in there to trick you into logging into like a fake Office 365 page. And then they'll use that fake Office 365 page to capture your credentials. And then if you don't have multi-factor authentication enabled, they can easily just log into your account. They'll have access to your emails, address books, files, anything you have in the Office suite. So then they can also use that. If they have your address book, they can then target other contacts that you have in your list with that same method. And I've seen that happen in Bermuda, especially during the pandemic. It was pretty prevalent. It's died down a little bit now, but it's still used. And then there's whaling, which takes spear phishing to another level, where they target an executive like the CEO or CFO, and create a specialized message. They may trick them into making a transfer, or, as I said previously, maybe compromise somebody in the accounts department's email. So it actually comes from the accounts department and they ask them to make a transfer. So yeah, things along those lines. Next slide, please.
Can I ask, so you got background noise going on. Could you mute yourselves? Here, a little bit of background noise.
Sorry, that's actually me. Give me one moment.
Okay.
Apologies for that. Okay, so here are some statistics. So the Verizon Data Breach Investigations Report from 2020 says phishing is the biggest cyber threat for small and medium businesses, accounting for 30% of small and medium businesses breaches. KnowBe4, which is a security awareness company, says 37.9% of untrained users fail phishing tests. 84% of small and medium businesses are targeted by phishing attacks. And a new phishing site launches every 20 seconds. 74% of all phishing sites use HTTPS. That's where you see the little lock in your taskbar or the top left that says this site is secure. Now, just because a site is secure doesn't mean it's safe. That just means the connection between your web browser and the website is encrypted, but it doesn't mean the site is safe. And 94% of malware is delivered via email. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the inevitability of the click. So the probability of at least one click increases with the amount of emails you send per campaign. So they usually send out, attackers won't just send out one or two, they may send out multiple to try and get users to click on them. Next slide. This is just an illustration of that email is an insider threat, because they're trying to trick somebody inside the organization. And the easiest way to get through is via email. So that's just an illustration, and the attacker sends the email. The user takes an action, either clicks a malicious link or there's a malicious attachment that they open in the file. Next slide. And here are some examples of phishing emails. You see the one on the left is COVID-19 related. Those have slowed down a bit, but at the start of the pandemic, there were lots of those coming in. So this is a tax cut document. It tries to get you to click a link. And the one on the right is claiming to be from the IRS, but as you can see, it doesn't come from the IRS's email domain, which is irs.gov. it comes from another email domain. So some things you can do is you want to check the domain of an email that you're receiving. You want to hover over the links. So if you just place your mouse over the link, say on the one on the left where it says view document, it will show you exactly where the link takes you. So if it's not one of the SharePoint Microsoft sites, you can see if it's a totally different link, then it would be very suspicious. Also, in phishing emails, there may be bad spelling or grammar because they may come from other countries where they don't really speak English. They're using translation tools to write the emails. And also, are you expecting the email? If there's any email that's trying to get you to take an action, you should ask yourself, are you really expecting the email? And call, you can always call to confirm. If you know the person, I would call if you're suspicious to make sure that they did send it. And they usually have some urgency attached to them, and they want you to take an action quickly. So that's also a red flag. So those are some things to look out regarding phishing. Next slide. So what can you do about it? Never click links or open attachments from unknown senders. Never send passwords or sensitive data via email, because that way, if an attacker compromises your email, they may look for passwords, trying to see what else they could find. I've seen some people save passwords and other sensitive data in like the notes section of Outlook. So that's a big no-nos. Never respond to requests for financial information. Of course, we as banks, we always tell our customers that. You want to verify the sender's address before clicking. And if you're not sure, contact the sender by phone. I think I said that already.
Rick, I want to pause for a second because I'm getting some information that everybody may not be seeing the presentation the way I'm seeing it.
Yeah.
Is everybody not seeing the full screen? Or just the panelists? Are you seeing the full screen?
We are seeing the next slide and the notes, I think, Tom, as well.
All right, hold on. Let me adjust this.
Yeah, I think.
Sorry, Tom. Yeah, when you do slideshow, it goes into two screens. One screen for the presenter and one screen for the.
Okay, so
user.
slideshow. Play from current slide. All right, I don't want to get hung up here all right,
That's better as it. That's better as it is anyway.
we'll go with it this way. Okay, Rick, sorry.
Okay.
Back to you.
Yeah, no problem. Next slide. So next topic is ransomware. So what is ransomware? Ransomware is extortion software that can lock your computer and then demand ransom for its release. Depending on the type of ransomware, either the entire operating system or individual files are encrypted. A ransom is then demanded from the victim. Next slide. So ransomware is on the rise. There's major increase in ransomware attacks. In 2019, there was a 118% year over year. Insurance company paying the ransom is higher. Higher ransoms, upwards of millions of dollars. And the average ransom payout is $178,254 as of second quarter 2020. And that's up 60% from Q1 2020. Industries like healthcare, government, transportation, managed service providers are all being actively targeted. Hackers often getting in via vulnerable RDP and stay undetected for months before launching a carefully crafted attack. I think a reason for that is because smaller companies don't have dedicated IT support and maybe lack of resources. So they may be exposed to things like that from poor configuration and not patching regularly. So the attacker will look to exploit that vulnerability. Next slide. So here are some ransomware trends. The average company size of ransomware victims is 625 employees, and the median company size of ransomware victims is 62 employees. 70% of ransomware attacks target small businesses. 33% of small medium businesses worldwide were hit by ransomware, and 60% of small medium businesses that were hacked go out of business after 6 months. And the largest ransom demand in 2019 was $18.8 million. And the largest ransom paid in 2019 was 5.6 million. 2018 was 250,000. Average ransom payment was 302,539, and the 2018 average was 28,920. So you could see it has been on the rise recently. Next slide. So ransomware trends. This graph shows that smaller companies are more vulnerable to RDP attacks, as I just mentioned. So you see, as the company gets larger, that vulnerability that attack vector doesn't seem to materialize. Phishing cases increase with company size, but still a threat to businesses of all sizes. And software vulnerabilities are high for very small businesses, then they seem to decrease for small to medium business and then increase again for large businesses. I think the reason for that is obviously the smaller companies don't have enough resources or dedicated support. And the larger companies, it's difficult to keep pace with the amount of devices that need updates. So it seems like the middle ground is better controlled. Next slide. So here's some more statistics on ransomware. So when an attacker compromises a computer with ransomware, 98% of the time, the payment is made when they pay the ransom. 97% of the files are recovered upon paying the ransom, and 3% of the time, people lose their data. And the average number of days that a ransomware incident lasts is 16.2 days. And of course, the payment options are usually in cryptocurrency, so 99% Bitcoin and 1% in other coins. Next slide. So ransomware controls. You want to back up your data frequently. You want to pick a good endpoint protection application. You want to regularly schedule patch management. Plan to fail well, have some sort of incident response plan, outlining what you would do in the case you have a compromise. Having a vendor on standby or you have an agreement with beforehand would be a good idea. And of course, training and testing your people is very good to do, because of course, people are known as the weakest links when it comes to security. So as much training as you can do would be beneficial. And phishing, of course, don't open that email link or attachment. So use the tips that I described earlier, and you'll be much safer. So this concludes my portion of the webinar. I hope everybody found it informative, and I'll pass it on to Paul from HSBC to talk about digital footprints.
Thank you, Rick. Good afternoon, Bermuda. So my name is Paul Maltby. As Rick said, I work for HSBC. I'm based in Jersey in the UK. I know we'll refer to this through cybercrime represents one of the fastest growing types of crime in the world, and it has done for a number of years now, and scarily costs something in the region of 2.9 million to the global economy every minute. And I guess here's the warning sign now. Some studies have shown that 90% of security breaches are caused by human error, or what as humans do. We're based on beautiful islands, some a little warmer than others, as it's rain and cold in Jersey today. But cybercrime is 24/7, 365 activity. It can be started anywhere in the world. You don't, just because we live in these beautiful islands, it does not make us immune to cybercrime. Our computers and systems at work and at home do have the ability to protect us, but we, the humans, are also a defense. People can refer, and you'll see it referred to as the human firewall. Phishing emails that Rick mentioned earlier, for example, is something we rely on you as a member of staff of your company, or sitting at home on your personal device looking at your emails to spot and report phishing emails, whether that be reporting to Amazon or reporting to your company locally, or just you can report it to the United States government that these phishing emails. But whatever you do, and as Rick says, don't click on these links. If you're anyway suspicious, don't click on these links. And that is the human element. That is where it can start. And that's where all this, the threat actors and the malicious can start, and the malicious links. This is very similar for your digital footprint. What you do as a human, it's down to you, and how you act and what you do online can affect your susceptibility to cybercrime. Okay, next slide, please. So I'm going to discuss digital footprint, as we've said, why you should care about it, and we'll give some tips on how to tidy it up. Your digital footprint is your digital trace of all your online activity. Everything that you ever searched, everything you've ever done on the internet. It may not be indexed and you may not be able to find it, but it's there. So, you could Google it, but it may not be there, but you have done things on the internet, obviously. And you can see from the first screen here, how quickly your digital footprint can increase. Think about the number of devices you use, you're on your Wi-Fi, your iPad, your phones. I think I've recently had conversations with Alexa, my beautiful friend now, from a Christmas present. And I say this candidly, do we truly know what data now Amazon is holding about us? So Alexa does send things up to the cloud. So again, all part of your digital footprint. Going slightly off tangent, but all very much related to our footprint. We may have heard of the phrase Internet of Things, known as IoT. Internet is a concept of connecting any device to the internet and to other connected devices. All of which the data is collected and shared data about the way they're used and about the environment around them. So anyone turned on their kettle remotely or dimmed the lights for a nap? I think even nowadays you can even look inside your fridge remotely, which again, all forms part of this digital footprint. Or if you had an alert on your phone that you're from your home CCTV, that there's been a trigger, maybe your neighbor's cat has walked past your camera again, and it's triggered an alert. As IoT has developed, some have been developed more securely than others. Who would have thought back in 2017, a hacker, in this case, he was an ethical hacker, so a good person rather than a bad, found that on a children's doll that could say words and respond back to you, he could actually update the phrases and the words that the doll was using, because of weaknesses in the controls that they put in. Even recently, hackers gained access to security cameras, gaining access to live feeds of 150,000 surveillance cameras. So again, whilst, this is not truly what I'm going to refer to on this talk, I think it's, again, one of these kind of areas where we have to be very cognizant. I don't want to sound all doom and gloom, so, but we just have to be conscious that the more we do, the bigger the surface area of attack. So if we have got surveillance cameras and all this kind of thing, it does increase our footprint. Next slide, please. So more on digital footprint. If you put a subject access request, although I've never tried this myself, but this is what they say. If you do a subject access request, a freedom of information request to Facebook, they will give you an average of 900 pages about yourself if you had a Facebook account for more than 5 years. So I think that alone, you need to understand your digital footprint to take steps to control it, help protect your identity and reputation, especially if you have got small businesses. These are the things that can really be used against you. It's your digital footprint that cyber criminals use to harvest your data, your name, address, your interest, your employment. They can craft, as Rick said, target social engineering attacks such as phishing emails or phishing calls, which we'll touch on as well. But yeah, it's very simple. If you like a page about football, and this is shared publicly around the world, already know you've got an interest in football, and if you know where you work, things can just be married up. So you have two sets of digital footprint: passive and active. Passive is information such as your IP addresses, web pages you visited, time spent looking at it, all gathered by the website to create a log of your visit. This is to help understand your interest and target relevant products or ads that you might be interested in. It's inevitable, but in the most doesn't pose any security danger, providing you haven't gone on to one of those malicious websites or phishing websites that Rick refers to. Active really is more where you come in. This is entirely in your control, and it's made up of information you have chosen to share. For example, if your employee or yourself logs into social media, signs up for a web-based service using their full identity, talks about themselves in a forum or discusses their work-home life in the public domain, then that information is then available to all and actively be used to create a digital footprint. So think about what you can do to protect yourself and protect your digital footprint. For example, one of the fun things you can do is conduct a search against yourself to see what is out there. So if you're a football player or you're famous in Bermuda, you can put your name in, and if you normally put it in inverted commas, because that will then only give you that person. So Paul Maltby, and I put that in inverted commas, and I can put Jersey. You can find out things. So again, you'll be able to see very quickly if you've got a real digital presence. So if you've got chief executives of your companies and you put in their name, you're likely to see more and more about them as they want to share their company's good fortunes. Check your privacy settings as well. This is always one of the big ones, and again, we'll discuss later. So let's look at social media in a bit more detail. To give you an idea of the problem with it, again, more stats. Social media enabled crime generates 3.25 billion in global revenue a year for the cyber criminals. I mean, these are scary figures. So people may have seen this wheel before, but we can pretty much say the world is busy sharing. For cyber criminals, this is simply a jigsaw puzzle. A piece here, a piece there, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. They can marry it all together, and then they can design, again, not to reiterate, very carefully campaigns to come at you if they so wish. So consider your footprint. Are you oversharing? Oversharing is easily done. Obvious one is like Facebook. Have you reviewed your security settings so that only your family and friends see your profile or what you share? Or have you looked at your security on your PC or your phone or your apps like Strava? I mean, Strava for me, I think is an amazing one. Can everyone see your activities instantly? So if I just search your name on Strava, could I find you? And could I see where you run and pretty much where you live, what time you go out, potentially even who you run with? who can see your data? You know, is it just your family and friends? And you know, the more we go into these areas, whether that be text messaging or Google or TikTok, you know, you will be more out there, more known. Remember, once it's on the internet, it's pretty much out of your control. I don't always mean to pick on Facebook, but I guess it is one of the most popular things on social media platforms we use. One red flag, and we're seeing this so much, and some is innocent and some is not so innocent, but especially on some of these social media platforms, you'll see these great questions. Oh, tell us what your favorite food was. Tell us what your first school was. Who was your favorite teacher? Tell us your pet's name. Or more simply, has anybody wished you happy birthday on Facebook? So a cyber criminal, if you've got an open profile, will already know your day and month of birth. So ask yourself, how do these tally up? You know, a lot of banks, if you phone them up, they'll say, can I take you through the security questions? What's the first security question? Can I have your date of birth, please? So again, somebody wishing you happy birthday on Facebook has already given you one of the 3 security questions for your bank details potentially, or onto a website that you think is secure. You know, pets' names. You know, there's been a lot of coverage recently that people are still using pets' names, and memorable dates for their passwords and usernames and things. So, you know, all these can be easily tallied up. So if I'm a Facebook user and I find out your email address, I could pretty much, and I know you've got a cat called Pebbles, I could try and break into your account. So it's all these, again, it's all this jigsaw puzzle. Next slide, please. And again, this is just to emphasize more. I mean, this is what I always get the word wrong. Barista, I always say barista, but barista, barista art. Posting can be fun, you know, posting, sharing can all be great fun. But, you know, what does this simple photo tell you? Does it tell you where you were? Probably. I was in a coffee shop, so you can tag the coffee shop. Did it tell you when? Yeah, because I've said, oh, look, I'm having this great coffee. And also you can say, oh, I was with Paul Maltby drinking coffee. And already you can build, you know, if you're going out with your business colleagues or partners and you're having a drink and you take a picture and you tag people, already people can start working those relationships. They can look and see that Paul Maltby, oh, he was with Dave. And then they can look on LinkedIn profiles and see the relationship. So as Rick was talking about, things like whaling and spearfishing, they can target people. So if they know that Paul Maltby works in finance, they can actually start thinking about how can we target these finance companies, or how can we start getting in to do something malicious. So, you know, geolocation service is another cracker. So with a picture, you know, take on your iPhone, have you got geolocation settings? So if you share a photo, those geolocation settings will tell you where this picture was and all the kind of metadata behind it.
Oh, I had a question. This seems like it would play right into like those identity scams where somebody impersonates a bank person and tries to authorize a transaction. So are they getting the data through these techniques?
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the ways, and that's, you know, and again, I mean, I'll speak a little bit, but yes, that is definitely one of the ways where you would, you just have to be cognizant. I don't think we can stop it, but I think you have to be cognizant of how much we share, you know, various organizations, and we know in Bermuda they've got lots of small businesses, and, you know, only a small number of staff. So people can be, I guess, be found quite easy. So yes, I think all these things, and again, I will conclude at the end. But yeah, I think we just have to be very cognizant that the more we share, the more we can become susceptible and vulnerable. Right, so last slide now, please. Thank you. So I've hopefully given you some food for thoughts on your footprint. For some businesses, it is, unfortunately, your digital presence is what drives your advertising, your sales, your feedback from your clients and customers. So it is always going to be tough to consider that balance of what you share, how you share it. So what can we, you know, what more can we do to have a think about protecting ourselves? So this is quite clever, Sal, when I say quite clever. There's a website you can go to. that's basically a database of all. That's gone to a. I'm seeing a camera. Thank you, Tom.
Good night.
There was a lovely picture appeared there for 2 seconds. And this it's called Have I Been Pwned? And so basically this is a database of all leaks that have been found on what they call the dark web. So the dark web is a place where the cyber criminals can sell and buy their services. So you can buy credit cards, you can buy email addresses, you can buy passwords. And all this has been gathered by one of the good guys. So he's gathered all this data and he's put it into a database, and then you can check against your email address to see whether or not there's been any compromise. So there's been loads and loads of breaches. The one on screen here, you can see at the bottom there, you can see the LinkedIn logo. So back in 2016, LinkedIn was hacked. So this particular screenshot shows that the email address that I typed in had been hacked. Also on this page, you can also look at password to see if the password you use has been hacked as well. So if you put in password 123, obviously it'll probably say, yes, that's been used before. There's been so many breaches, so many different companies. I mean, we hear it on a weekly basis. British Airways, Facebook, I think it was 540 million users on Facebook. Marriott Hotels, 339 million guests were impacted. So you can use this website to check your email address, check your password, and see if it's been on a previous breach. And with that, you can really quickly consider changing password, changing account, depending if it's a work or personal account you're referring to. Again, if these are on the dark web, but these are or will probably be used against you. So what else can we do? I think to mitigate such risks, especially where your email address or passwords are being used, one of the great things to use is what they call two-factor authentication. So that's using a second form of as well as your password. So this can take the form of a message to your mobile, or using also an authentication app to confirm that you're logging into the device. So it may give you a code and you have to type this code in, and then you can continue on. Other things to consider: always keep your software up to date. Install antivirus, and also this may sound a strange one, but delete unwanted or unused applications, because a lot of these won't get updated. They'll just remain in there, and as we talk about, if the software has not been updated, these could become vulnerable. So to summarize my slides, whilst we shouldn't lock the doors, close the blinds, shut down our computers, throw out the window and hide in the corner, I think we have to take a pragmatic view of our data and what we share. And it sounds a bit cheesy, but is sharing really caring? Thank you. That ends my things. And now on to Andy, I think.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Hi, Tom. Could you go back to single slide view? You're showing one slide and the next slide on the same screen, please.
Sorry about that.
That's fine.
How's that?
Good. I'll just zoom a bit. Thank you. Yeah, hi everybody, and thanks for joining. Thanks for your time. I'm Andy Redding. I'm the head of IT and IT security at Bermuda Commercial Bank. Been there for 4 years, but have a long career in IT, information, and IT security. I'm going to do just a pretty quick and slightly simplified down presentation on how easy it is for criminals to target a company with a phishing attack. So that they could start off just by choosing a target. For example, they see government of Bermuda, and they say, let's see if we can target them. So using free online tools, you can quickly search for email addresses of employees at government of Bermuda. There's a screenshot there. You just simply type in gov.bm, find emails, and lo and behold, over 200 emails are available publicly that the criminals could then use. So there's 200 straight away. And as my colleagues before me have said, and some of the stats, if those employees are untrained at spotting links, 30 to 40% of them could click it. That's 60 breaches at the government. I'm not picking on the government of Bermuda here. It's just an example of how freely information is for organizations and their employees. So instantly they've got 200 addresses. Next slide. Some other resources online also show you the most common pattern of the email address. So armed with that I know its first initial surname at, for example, bcb.bm, the bank I'm at, and I can then start searching the web for those digital footprint, if you like, of bcb.bm, people's names, LinkedIn, Facebook, where they work. And then you might say somebody on LinkedIn at one of these targeted companies have just announced very proudly that they've just migrated to Office 365 successfully. The criminals instantly then now have a long list of email addresses of a company. They now know that they've just migrated to Office 365, so they could quickly target a phishing attack using Office 365 authentication required attack. So again, they all link together, and it's very simple for the criminals to get a valid list of email addresses. Next slide there, please, Tom. So they've got all that information. They could then expand the information to try and seek out who the CFO is, the head of HR, or so on by calling, social engineering, calling up reception and saying, "Oh, could I speak to your CFO? I forget his name. What's his name again?" And gain the receptionist's trust, and end up with all sorts of other valuable information to help target their attack. So unless your employees are trained on social engineering tactics, hopefully, as we're making you more aware of today in this, they could easily provide that information out. So, you know, the question here, are your employees aware? And you know, if not, make sure they are. Put policies in place to say, you know, be wary of cold callers. Don't divulge any direct phone numbers, email addresses, and even employee names if you're not familiar with the person that's calling. Anyway, carrying on through this scenario, the hackers now have a pretty comprehensive list of names, email addresses, and so on, and they knew that they were migrated to Office 365, so they create a fake website that looks like a Microsoft Office login screen. And again, colleagues before me have mentioned very similar tactics. So once they've created the website and they know that it stores email address, password of any people that fall for the scam. Next slide, please, Tom. They move on to sending out the email. So I've got all the information. Out go the email. Looks like a genuine Microsoft unusual sign-in activity has happened on your Microsoft account. And then for your newly Office 365 trained users, oh, that's not good. And it's kind of urgent. Somebody's logged on as me from Indonesia. I'd best review that. And there, the blue button, review recent activity. And again, these are the red flags. Even though the email sender looks good, it's relevant because you've just converted to Office 365. Hover over that blue button link before clicking it and check the website that it's going to, because often that would get clicked and you would end up just with a page there that looks like sign into Microsoft. And that's where the trouble starts. So next slide, Tom. Excuse me, technical difficulties my side. So okay, so the recipient hasn't spotted the red flags on that email. They've clicked the link and they've supplied their login, credentials and password. So the big red there, the criminals now have full access in Office 365 to your Microsoft account and therefore your email system. So they can quickly now send out a fake invoice to either a bank or another vendor, supplier of services, either locally or internationally, and it looks like it's coming from you. They would also look in your contacts, your email contact list, and they would steal them as a first off, because then they can start targeting even more people. but also they know who to contact, and they can look at your sent emails previously and see that perhaps you had instructed a bank to send some money. So they just duplicate that email and send it to exactly the same person in the same style, but this time to a fraudulent recipient. It would be very easy then if somebody in the bank, for example, said, oh, well, George has sent me a request to transfer some money again, like he did last week. I'll do it again for him. Now, that's where banks have to have all the controls in place to check the authenticity of that request each and every time. If they don't, then we lose money. So it's that easy that it can happen. So the really the information message here is even if an email is from a known address, which it can be now because the criminals are using that address, always verify any requests for payments or other financial activity via a phone call or WhatsApp message to your friend or something like that, or your colleague. Don't reply by email, because the criminals will just read it and reply saying, yes, this is fine. So even phishing emails can result in takeover of an email account. So do be very wary on anything that would potentially let money leave either your organization or somebody else's. Next slide, please, Tom. Believe it or not, this scenario did happen in Bermuda. I've simplified it slightly. There was a slightly more technical mode of attack, but in essence, that's exactly what the criminals did. They sent to many, many local small businesses, and they only needed a few to click that link to verify their account, that they could then start requesting invoice payments from other vendors and suppliers and ask bank for bank transfers. So message again, think before you click. We are small, but it still happens here. So that ends my presentation. Do stay safe online. Thank you. Over to Marcus next, I think.
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, hi guys, I'm Marcus Edwards. I'm the head of security operations for Butterfield Group. So as my colleagues have been saying, basically the assumption is here for my part of the talk is that despite all the preparation, despite all of the the advice that people have been given, something's gone wrong. You or your company have been compromised somehow, and some event has happened to you. So it's a case of how do you then respond to that? How do you recover from that? What are the steps you can take to try and ensure that you try and eradicate that that compromise or that malicious piece of software from that's got its way onto your system somehow as quickly as possible. So there's basically a 4-step plan to how you respond to an incident. So the preparation is what everyone's been talking about so far. That's essentially all the good practice you should put in place to try and stop something from happening. Try and plan as much as you can. Try and put those steps in place to prevent it. But assuming that something does happen, and assuming that like I say, a compromise of some sort is or a security incident has happened to you, then it's a case of what you do about it next. So I'll just take you through the sort of the next 3 steps really. We're around the detection and analysis, the containment, eradication and recovery, and then essentially the post-incident activity again to try and prepare for any incident better next time. So next slide, please, Tom. So in terms of the response consideration, so the first thing really to do is try and assess the situation, trying to understand what has happened to you. As I said, there's many scenarios that this can happen. Either it could be personal elements, it could be purely your business, it could be multiple people in the business, it could be something to do with online systems, it could be something to do with physical security actually on premises. So it's really trying to get the best understanding of the current situation at the time. So trying to find out what systems have been compromised. Do the attackers have any sort of persistence on your system? So have they actually still got access to those? Have you actually been infected by any malware? Is it ransomware? And if it's ransomware, to think what you need to do about it. There's been a lot of news in the headlines around the Colonial Pipeline attack where they were infected by ransomware. They actually did pay out. And is that really the right way forward for your company, for you to actually address that? Well, fundamentally, it depends on what situation you're in, whether you're able to recover without paying that ransomware. Obviously, nobody wants to, and the advice would be not to try and pay ransomware because that just plays into the attacker's hands. Unfortunately, people sometimes do pay out mainly because they have no way out. So it's all in that preparation that should stop you having to go down that route and actually pay the ransomware, because sometimes it doesn't actually work anyway. So you can pay the ransomware, pay the hackers off to try and get the keys to unencrypt your data, and it still doesn't work. So basically they just take the money and run. So you need to effectively understand what your situation is and prepare as best you can for that. Then look at this sort of type of data that the people might have got on you. So have they got your bank account data? Have they got any customer data? They got personal details? So what exactly have they had access to, and understand that as best you can. And that allows you to prepare and plan for your response, and take the next steps successfully, hopefully. Have you suffered any financial losses? So if they've got your bank accounts, can you check your bank accounts yourself and find out if there's any transactions gone out of those? Are they, we've had instances where people, there have been instances where people have actually gained access to people's and business accounts and sat there for months and months watching activity happen. So this might be a long planned attack. So it could be that without, and they're just waiting for the right type of payment. They're waiting for, the big invoice to come through before they then take action. So checking your accounts, making sure that there isn't any activity on there that doesn't look proper business activity, and making sure there isn't any unusual transactions is key. Have the attacks compromised any email system? So again, people have been talking about this, but it's like, what have they sent out? If they have, make sure that you check your sent box to make sure no emails have gone from your accounts which don't look like they've been sent from you. And this would apply to any of your team members and company employees. Have they used those accounts, and have they sent anything to other companies? Small businesses are typically used to try and attack bigger businesses. They're used as a supply chain attack, so they will compromise a small business with a small number of employees which have very loose security, and they will use those as a way in to try and compromise a larger organization that they can actually extract money from. So actually sending emails from your accounts to other companies to try and use those as fishes for other companies is very common. And again, that's been in the news a lot recently of where that's happened. So in terms of looking at your data, you're looking at your systems, is that still intact? Has it been corrupted at all? Have the hackers deleted anything? Has any data been encrypted, which either could be through ransomware or through other means? So do you have any loss of data? And that's important, again, in terms of establishing recovery steps. And then just generally outages. So as part of this compromise, have you lost the system, system downtime, or had any system downtime? Have you had any transactions fail? Have you actually been impacted from a business sense? And so establishing what the current state of any IT systems is also key. Next slide, please, Tom. So then once we've actually understood the situation, we now have got a good grasp of what's actually occurred to us. Then it's just all around trying to mitigate that and remediate that as quickly as possible, trying to take those actions that will prevent the situation getting worse, and trying to prevent either loss of data, financial loss, reputational loss, to ensure that your business isn't actually make headline news and something else happens that can make the situation worse. So some of these common sense really, but sort of just run through immediate steps. So the first part is assessment, and then it's establishing your plan of action. So any passwords that might have been compromised, immediately change those. And obviously things like two-factor authentication, make sure that had been enabled. So, a hacker couldn't then rechange your password to something that they can then access. So everything that, any password that you use, make sure that you get total control over that account. That may be something you need help with. So it might be something you need to talk to vendors, to talk to companies, talk to IT departments if you have them, to make sure that they're aware, and make sure that that account, and whichever account has been compromised, if it has, then that account is back under your control. If you suspect any bank accounts being compromised, contact your bank immediately. Let them be open and honest around what the situation is. So don't try and hide things, because that could potentially make it worse. So tell them what the situation is, tell them what's happened, and then they will work with you to try and establish the plan of action. Now, that might include freezing your bank accounts if that's the right thing to do. We wouldn't want bank accounts to be frozen if that's going to stop you doing business, but if it's going to prevent money going out that could potentially cripple your business, then that might be the right course of action. So make sure that you notify the bank, work with them, and they will help you out in terms of a recovery plan. Alert the IT department, as I said, either of your own company or the ISP that actually provides your domain and email services if you use one. Again, they may be able to block certain things on their side, so to prevent this situation getting worse, prevent emails coming in, or prevent your emails getting out from your account if that's still active and people are actually still using it. So again, this is all around who you should talk to and what they should do, and then what you can do for yourself in that sense. Seek advice from industry partners and professionals. So people, you may not be very proficient in IT and security, but there are probably people out there that are better at that than you. So seek guidance, seek advice from people that can help. There are companies out there that specialize in this type of thing. So depending on how bad it is and depending on what the level of compromise, speak to them and get some help as well. And then it's a case of whether you can do this or whether you would need to work with those partners to try and do this work for you. Block the domains of any URLs that have been used, that are either being used in the phishing attack, for instance, to ensure that nobody can then access it and the attackers can't actually make the situation any worse. Block any email addresses used in the compromise, so more members of your company don't receive the same email from the same people, and again makes the situation worse. Make sure you scan for any malware. So hopefully you should have up-to-date anti-malware software on your systems. But if you haven't, procure it very quickly. Make sure you scan all the systems that you think might be impacted. Depending on your network, it could be a very open network, which the attackers could have actually got access to multiple systems. So it's making sure that wherever they may have got a foothold, make sure that is actively scanned and any software, malicious software is then removed. In terms of onward communication, going back to the supply chain attack, so if it's worth notifying any companies that you work with that you have been compromised in some way, just in case they have also suffered either a similar compromise or actually received emails from members of your company as a sort of a supply chain piece. So notify vendors, make sure that they're sort of keep them informed, but don't basically over-egg the situation. So they just give them the information that they need to know to be able to protect themselves and also to help you understand the situation as best you can. So just be very clear and concise with that communication. If you are governed by a regulator at all, they need to be informed, especially if there's been any material breach. That could be something that you need to make them aware of. A company website provider. So certainly with phishing attacks, we see a lot of small companies have their websites compromised. So and which either can be something that is used in the attack on them, or it can then be used to host a site that's then used in a further phishing attack on other companies. So make sure that if you have a website, then you notify your website provider that you've been compromised to avoid that attacker being able to make best use of your website in whatever way they can. And then lastly on this slide, but maybe not lastly overall, notify the police. Make sure, especially if there's any financial loss or you suspect illegal activity. Compromises can happen in multiple ways from many locations within IT. So, but the local police will effectively work with you and help you sort of recover from this as well. And they need to know, just in case, they can notify other people of what's happened to you. And that allows that communication to spread and make sure that people are aware of what's happened and they can help themselves, help protect themselves as well. Next slide, please, Tom. How are we doing for time? I see we've overrun a bit. Can we go on?
Oh, we're good. We're good. We have 90 minutes for the total session.
Brilliant. Okay, that's fine. Thanks. So establishing all of that, hopefully you've effectively blocked everyone out of your systems. You've recovered your accounts and you've made your company safe. It's then really doing a more in-depth review on what might have happened. So a sort of understanding the far-reaching consequences of whatever security attack and compromise has happened. So it's reviewing all of your internal systems, sites, online accounts and websites, again, just to make sure everything's in place, make sure access is as it is, make sure nothing's been changed during the period of the attack, and just making sure that everything's as it should be, really. In terms of freezing the accounts, this is, as I said, working with the bank, this is the point where you've made a decision that maybe the freezing the accounts is the right thing to do. So take that action. Reviewing the email communications, as I said, and looking for elements. So there's ways and of means of disguising emails that have been sent, or sending emails that are timed, so they could actually be sent beyond the current time frame. So make sure that you do a thorough review of email systems to make sure there isn't anything untoward there. Review data that might be held externally in the cloud. So anything, documentation stored on Dropboxes, OneDrive, Google Drive, iCloud, all of those are places either where people could have extracted data or put data. It could be something that is used in a future attack, or is basically making sure that nobody's actually taken or changed any data that is stored in those areas. Now they're becoming a lot more common, especially in the small businesses and personal use. Again, it's going through some of these again, the financial activity on your accounts, doing a thorough, more in-depth review of those. So it's not just your recent transactions, but as I said, because people can sometimes sit on those accounts for months, making sure you review the accounts in depth over time, and making sure there isn't any issues with that. And as been said before by Paul, reviewing the online presence, your social media footprint, websites, apps, any shopping, making sure that other things, your accounts, whatever they are, most people and companies have multiple social media accounts these days. They use multiple apps and websites. All of those, especially if the same password has been used across those systems. Hopefully people have started to learn that you try and have a different password for each account and for each website that's been used. But if you don't, if your account has been compromised, then it could be used in multiple places. So doing a review of all the online presence and make sure everything is as it should be is worthwhile, and changing the passwords. Especially if it's a more severe compromise and you think it's widespread, changing everything to reset the whole suite of your online footprint is worthwhile. And then if you have physical systems that have been compromised, consider wiping and rebuilding. So you might have a good anti-malware software. In theory, it could have cleaned everything, but it's depending on the severity of it, just to be absolutely safe. If you have an ability to just wipe your servers, your laptops, and rebuild them from scratch, it's worth doing, just to ensure there isn't any lingering software or presence that people have left on there. And so at the end of that, once all of that activity is done, it's then a case of potentially, and only when you're absolutely sure everything's secure and back under your control, you should consider unfreezing those accounts and effectively getting back to normal. And hopefully the damage isn't too great. Okay, next slide, Tom, thanks. So it's then a case of doing a post-incident review, as you call it, a PIR, and it's then just going through some of the preparation steps again and analysing what went wrong, analysing how you were attacked, analysing how you were compromised potentially. Was it quite often members of staff might have clicked things. People make mistakes all the time, and I think, as the stats proved earlier, it doesn't matter how much training you give to your staff, there is always people that will click on links. The more people get hit, eventually some people do fall for it. So it's a case of then doing a review of all of those systems and trying to do some planning to ensure that then this doesn't happen again. You take some lessons learned from the activity, and then you make your situation better. So review your protection to start with. What level of anti-malware have you got? Have you got it on all the laptops, servers, phones these days? Make sure every device, and the Internet of Things is potentially covered if you have an ability to put anti-malware software on. EDR is a bit more thorough. It's endpoint detection and response. So this is a way of basically trapping attackers being on your systems at the point where they're actually undertaking activity. So that allows an automated response, and it basically monitors for patterns of behavior on those systems, either people actually moving through your IT systems and changing things or escalating their privileges through their accounts to be able to get greater and greater privilege and undertake more and more activity. So EDR is certainly something to think about, especially if you're a medium sort of size business or grow into a medium-sized business. Threat protection software. So this is software that would protect your email systems. Consider those that might actually block some. A lot of ISPs these days have reasonable amounts of protection for spam included, but they may not block malicious software. So it's things that might actually be able to filter malware, specific document types out at the before they actually hit people's inboxes. So threat protection software is worth considering. Increasing the security in your proxies to block specific sites. So either if your staff have accessed sites and potentially downloaded things, those can be blocked on your network proxies, and so that's worth considering too. Or it's worth considering a review of those if they were compromised in any way or they were used to try and access some of your systems. NIPS is network intrusion protection systems. So that again, that if your network is targeted by external parties, that would allow those and effectively get through to your systems as either document transfers, file transfers, transactions. NIPS would effectively protect your systems from any activity and would report on that and hopefully give you a better understanding of where you might be attacked in future. So again, something worth considering. It may be not appropriate for all businesses, depending on the size of the business, but it's worth a review and a consideration, especially if you've been compromised. Then it's a case of looking at your business continuity plans. How do you recover from the event that's happened? Have you lost any data? Or if you did, how would you prevent the data loss in the future? So have you got resilience built into your system? So have you got failover so if one server is compromised, can you automatically fail over to another? Have you got contingency, which is an even more involved one, which is if one site is compromised, then can you fail over to another site which is more secure? So if you use either contingency sites or even contingency servers, some small businesses I know, their contingency site is their home, so they have their office servers and then they have their home servers, just so at least if you do get one system wiped, then you can back up and use a different one. Consider taking, well, not consider, but do take regular data backups. This is to ensure that if you do suffer any data loss, you can recover from that. Making sure you have a regular backup and recovery testing to ensure that those backups are there and make sure that you can reinstall them, and undertake regular failovers of both resiliency, contingency, and perform backups and recovery exercises to ensure that all of those are working as you'd expect. And again, think a bit further about your next attack. So within that, it's around developing response plans. So however you were compromised, if it was a phishing attack, have you got a response to that phishing attack? So it's not so much working out what's happened, but basically a very planned response. So you know exactly what you do, how to respond to it, who to contact. So you get lists of contacts, you get a planned list of activity, and making sure you actually walk through those and you can then respond in a very formulaic way. And that helps people, especially in an emergency situation. It takes the pressure out, takes all of the nerves away when you're trying to do this, because you've already thought about it, you've got the plan, you can just execute that plan. It really helps in that sense. And doing those tabletop exercises to walk through those, and that's worthwhile, maybe to then have a bit of a brainstorm with staff members and work and or family sometimes, work through where there might be gaps in your protection, where there may be gaps in your process, where you've got gaps in your security, where people quite often have drive-by hacking, where people actually would get onto your Wi-Fi network, whether it be work or personal Wi-Fi network, crack your your passwords on your routers. So look for the weak spots within your security and where you might actually be compromised next time. And then really just, as people have said before, think about additional training for staff. You regular training and getting things like this, I suppose, but provide that to your staff and provide it to members of family if necessary, to make them aware of these type of incidents and how they can protect themselves both online and how they can recover from that if they do get compromised. I regularly get contacted on Facebook when people have had their accounts compromised. What do they do? How do they get it back? Quite commonly, people have already set up a second account because they feel like they've never able to get their first account back because they've just lost it and somebody's taken control over that. I had a friend recently said, I'm watching my old account from afar. All my old photos are just sort of a memory now. So making sure that any training for staff to ensure that they're aware of how this can happen always helps. So as people said before, good luck, stay safe, and hopefully this has helped educate you and give you some ideas of what you can do to secure your company and yourself in the future.
Thank you, Marcus, and thanks to the team for great information. I'll open it up now if anybody has questions. We have about 15 minutes left on the Zoom session. You can raise your hand, or you just send me a message to unmute you, and I'll do that. I have a question while I wait for somebody else to step forward. I think this is probably for Rick. With regard to passwords, Rick, I know most of us who use the Chrome browser now get these alerts that 400 of your passwords have been compromised. Does that literally mean we have to go out and change all 400? Or I mean, obviously some of those may be inactive, but how good is that information?
Yeah, I think some of those could be old and outdated. I would say another site to look at is have I been pwned?
Right.
I think we talk about that. That could show you what accounts have been leaked and what password you need to change. But sometimes it may be old stuff that you haven't even used before, or stuff that's not relevant. But it's always a good idea to use a password manager as well. I use 1Password myself, and it has a browser login for Chrome and Edge as well. And it will generate very strong passwords for you, and you don't even have to remember them, right? So when you visit the site, it will automatically, once you log into 1Password with your one master password, it will, because I have like maybe 150 to manage, so it's hard to keep track of all of them. So you would just, you basically just log in with that 1Password, and then it will autofill the data in the browser for you. So I think that's a good idea for everybody to use one of those.
Okay. Great information.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm just looking out there in the Q&A and don't see anything. All right, folks, I'm gonna, oh, here we go, we got one. Okay, I'll just read this, it came through the chat. Is there a website to go to report phishing?
I don't know if one of you guys want to take that one. I could take it.
I can take it, Tom.
Yeah.
I mean, it really depends on how you've been phished, and if you've been phished pretending to be your bank, for somebody pretending to be a bank, you would report it to that bank's phishing team. Most company websites actually have a little phishing account on there that you can send it to. So yeah, it really depends who sent the phishing, in what context, and what they were trying to do. So it would whoever they were trying to impersonate is normally the person that you would try and report it to. So if they're trying to impersonate PayPal have a phishing account that you can send it on to.
Yeah, and each of our banks did set up, I remember this back in 2013, set up a dedicated phishing email to report phishing attacks. So it's phishing@clarionbank.com and so forth for your respective bank.
Exactly.
Okay.
Just to add on that one as well. I mean, in the UK, now the government are very much like we're saying, PayPal, Amazon you can go get these phishing emails, and the last thing you want to do is try and then go onto the website to find who to report. So there is now a one-stop shop in the UK, and we did a quick research for the other side of the pond as well. And there is I think it's called Anti-Phishing Working Group, and I haven't looked at this recently, but and it's a US based, and you can report any phishing email. So irrespective if it's from a bank or from Amazon, they will take them and use them, I believe. I say I haven't looked at it recently, but that's one of the, I need to certify that, but I think that's one of the things definitely doing in the UK. And I think that is the equivalent in the States, and I guess you guys in Bermuda could leverage off that as well as a, but I just need to, but it's called the Anti-Phishing Working Group, US partners.
Good information. Another question come in. I'm not sure if this one's going to be something we can tackle, but it said, is there insurance or laws that protect against breaches? And again, in a Bermuda context, I don't know if we have, I'm going to assume this is, do we have an obligation to report breaches? Because obviously criminals don't care if there's a law. So I'll throw this out to the panelists. You're all many of you are in different jurisdictions, but with respect to Bermuda, I don't believe we have a law that requires reporting of breaches, although it's definitely a best practice. Anybody want to tackle that one?
Yeah, I can take that. So there's cyber insurance is available here in Bermuda. I know Friesenbrook Mayor, for example, do offer a couple of options in that space that can help cover things like forensics experts to come in and try and work out what's happened, help with recovery, media, marketing, communications. So from the insurance perspective, that is available. It's worth speaking perhaps with your preferred insurance provider here on the island. As for laws, if you are a regulated organization, you do have the responsibility of reporting cyber breaches that have affected your business for a certain amount of time. I think it's 4 hours or a core part of your business day. I don't recall exactly, but there's no laws that protect us because it's all illegal activity and the criminals will continue. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thanks, Andy. That was very helpful. Let's see. Okay, I don't see anything else out there, and we're getting pretty close to the end. Paul, thank you. And I guess we're going to wrap it up. And again, I want to thank the panelists for their participation. And we'll work with the BEDC on getting this recording out. And I wish everybody a good day. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.